My name is Alonso, but everybody knows me by Deadhead or Death. I am self-taught. I grew up in Mexico. When I think like since birth, I've been drawing. Apparently, I've been carrying coloring books all my life in colors, and so grew up in a creative family without somebody that would like teach me how to do art. But it was more about play, about having fun. Anybody that has ever been in Mexico, there's a lot of events and toys and family like gatherings and stuff like that. So I grew up in a big family of always having fun in music and dancing and going to festivals and things like that. And so I grew up in a little town or city called Nuevo Laredo. It's the border of Laredo, Texas. And so I grew up with both cultures and grew up with a bunch of toys from both cultures. That's one of the biggest inspirations for me, play and toys and action figures and music. Why? Because my mom will love that stuff. She will take us to the mall across and take us to McDonald's, play video games. It was the 80s, so it was import-export, like Nintendo, Segas, and all that stuff, all the cool stuff. So she will take us, and then we'll go to the toy stores, and we just look at the boxes. We just look at the toys and how they make them, and look at the comics. And then at the end, reward, right? We'll come back with a new toy, and again keep the boxes. And that's one of the things that like was intriguing to me. It was just not only the toy and the play. It was who was making it and how it was being produced. And in the young age, just staring at how the design was created. So I fell in love with the graphic part of art. I always, like we were begged, like Jennifer said, I have a twin, so we will beg my mom for courses of art, but in a little town there was no courses, so we would learn from comic books and cartoons. And that, after 5, and you go to kindergarten, is when you start noticing it becomes a problem. So the problem was because we didn't know that we were dyslexic. And so we were communicating visually, not really in a written format. So when we go to kindergarten, we started having problems because the teachers would complain. It's like, your kids, you only want to draw. I think you're the problem. And so we grew up not knowing they had dyslexia and a little bit, feel weird about the whole thing. And so, you were the strange little kid, and that people will say that, he's a little witch. So that kind of affected me, and so I grew up with a lot of insecurity, but also because my teachers would like force me to not do art, it made the opposite, made me want to draw more. Why would they try to stop something that I wasn't hurting anybody and it was fun for me? And plus that, there's a whole like industry of it. And this is a young age. This is 8, 9. I started like getting more into art and communicating through art, but not knowing. This is like subconscious things. And I started looking at also like, why is it okay to, for example, do sculptures of Jesus and everything that you guys like music, but I can't. So that became a defined format, or a way for me to, you're not gonna make me do whatever you want. I'm gonna do it and try to find the strength on it. Eventually, I learned how to do art. I won competitions in Mexico, but again, because I didn't have good grades, they would give the prize to people that had the grades. And even though they didn't win the awards, they will get the awards instead of me, and that made me more angry. And so I became more of a chip on my shoulder, and just to keep on getting better. And when somebody would say, you can't do it, I'll just persist and work harder and learn more techniques. So as a young age, I was doing stuff that not only was good for my age, but even for an adult. That even my teachers will tell, one teacher specifically called my mom to tell her that I was lying to the kids, that that I was a little liar, because I had drawn this beautiful bull that she knew my dad had drawn it instead of me. And so that made me more angry, made me more pissed, and made me, just keep on learning more and drawing more. But, I knew I had something that it was different from me. And then eventually went to high school, and we went across the border, Laredo, and one of the teachers noticed that me and my brother had talent. And so he brought us into his classroom, but it was a graphic design course. It wasn't a first, it's just your typical, you're gonna learn art. It was already a graphic design. We started winning contests. So I became self-taught eventually. Eventually I go to college, Art Institute, college, but always ahead, because I had that drive. Conflicts with teachers, they're like, "Yo, you don't wanna do my stuff." I was like, "I already finished your stuff. You want me to do it again?" So I would do 3 times the course, or whatever assignment it was. I'll do it 3 times, because nobody could keep up with me. And the thing is, I love so much art that I didn't mind doing it over and over. My whole story is really long, and in the sense of always persisting. One of the also key parts of me jumping into things is just learning new techniques, new formats of creating, and visually telling my story. And in high school, I was a really popular guy, because I was into sports too, but I couldn't connect with people. And so eventually they found out that I had dyslexia. And when they told me I had dyslexia, that changed that was a point that I was like, okay, I'm not a normal, and so I started learning about visual arts and how can I use it. And so I learned also that, using psychology, using ways of advertising and things like that helps with our work, and visually communicating. But I still was a little bit awkward, communicating, letting out what I was feeling. So then we went to the Art Institute in Houston, and for the first time, me and my brother, we saw a real museum with art. And we didn't not only just see one form of art, because we went to the contemporary, we went to MFA, we went to all the museums in one day. And to see what you were just seeing in books in a larger scale transformed my life. I was a graphic artist, comic artist, and now I wanted to do paintings. And even though I was in the Art Institute, I wanted to give up, and I wanted to learn fine arts. And so while I was in Art Institute, I would go to the museums, I'll study, because I would study the paintings, because I started feeling things in the paintings. I started feeling that they were communicating with me. It was a different format. It was a different way of communicating. Why is it weight? Well, I can see weight. I can see artists talking to me. It's like a communicating artist to artist, like collaborating, learn from me. And so that I started learning techniques visually, and then I had to pick up new materials like oil paintings and other stuff like sculpting. So I've always been attracted visually through art, it talks to me. So then I learned a little bit, and then I decided to take a college class or go to college, and I took fine arts. During my fine arts courses, I also I was again ahead, and I started developing this new style that nobody was doing it. I was doing the course, I was going to school, right? And I was doing whatever they were doing, but I also started doing my own thing. And doing my own thing, I started doing humans with animal skulls. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was something that was just coming out. So I was doing life drawing, and I would draw the body, but I will never draw the face. So the question was, why cannot draw the face? Why is it hard for me to draw the face? It's not that I can't, it's just I decide not to. And studying myself, I also have a little bit of autism. So I have a little bit of problem looking at people's faces if I don't feel comfortable. So how can I express what that person is feeling if I can't draw the face? So one of the things that I always done, because I grew up in Mexico, is play with animals and look at nature. And we used to go to ranches, pick up animals, but also animal skulls. And for some reason, in my first drawing, I decided to put a rabbit skull in it. And I was like, cool. And I brought it to school and I already liked it. And then I started putting like other kind of animals on it. Still didn't know what it was. But eventually I started realizing that by putting an animal skull, I can put the personality of whoever I'm drawing. And I can tell a story. And so I started playing with that and learning how to tell a story with different skulls, right? And how in mythology or in folklore, there's always, the story of the fox, the story of the rabbit. And those rabbits are heroes or they're villains, and you can play with that. You can visually play with that, and you can tell a story. And that's another thing. Growing up in Mexico, there's a lot of folklore, there's a lot of ghost stories, there's a lot of music inspired by this occult and secretive things. And one of the persons that inspired me the most, going back, it was my grandfather. My grandfather was a musician, and he was a trumpet player, and he also became the municipal director of Nuevo Laredo. He was a really famous person in our town, and he was really inspiring for me because he would do music and do art in a different way, right? But he also would tell me ghost stories. And so I always wanted him to tell us ghost stories about when he was young and drinking and saw the devil and stuff. But it was funny, right? And it was cool. It made my imagination, come out with things. And because I am a visual person, I imagine stories. You tell me a story and I want to make it in my head, So it was pretty cool. And I started bringing that back of remembering my grandfather. He go by Tepa and Gaudencio, that was his name, Hernandez. And his wife, it was Maria Teresa, but she was totally the opposite of my grandfather. She actually was afraid and superstitious. A really nice lady, but she was really superstitious. And she would collect flowers and she had a garden and take care of the garden and stuff. And it was like precious to her. And one day, because I would love to play with insects, I found this big moth. This called a witch moth in Mexico, and I started playing with it. And so I carried it, and then my grandma comes out, and she sees me playing with this moth, and she's like, "Why you picked it up? Now somebody in the family is gonna die." And I was like, "Oh no," right? I started laughing. But then when I was drawing this deadheads, for some reason, it clicked. The balance between fear and strength. And I started realizing that what I was drawing, it was a balance between life and death. So started connecting a little bit. I was trying to say. And then one day, my mom calls me. Now, my mom was, like I said, really creative. She always smiled. She was really fun and stuff, but she brought me in. And she told me that she had cancer. So I tried to keep it inside. Like, don't worry, Mom, everything's gonna be fine. And when she's like, no, it's because, and I just wanted to tell you and stuff. And it was really hard because I wasn't doing this. And so I decided to just, don't worry about it. And I just went out and I went out to an event. And so on that event that I went, it was from school, and it was in college. And like I said, during college, I was doing like the courses and all that stuff, but also I was doing my own stuff. And so one of the teachers decided to show one of my personal artworks in that opening without telling me. So I go to the event and she says to me, I was like, hey, Alonso, like, I just want to tell you, like, everybody likes your piece. And I was like, what piece? And she's like, the one that you did in school, the one that you've been working on. And I was like, that's a personal piece. And you should have told me. I could have told my family. I said, well, I didn't thought about it. I just put it. Well, that's kind of rude. And so I go and see it. And when I see it, it's a woman with a bird skull of a magpie with a little wing and one breast torn. And it's when I realized that I was predicting my mom's cancer. Now that made me think, it's like, I understand my mom, but what kind of art is this? I didn't know it was visionary art. So what I realized that I was drawing, it was yes, something was dying. But when something dies, that does not mean it dies forever. It transforms. It becomes an evolution. It becomes growth. So my mom or anybody else that goes through a disease and even our death transforms into something else. And that itself should not be put as pain, but as success, as strength. And so I started drawing more of this and trying to learn how I could draw instead of drawing something that is considered death, painful, and suffering into something more colorful, more fun. Be the hero in your story. And so the Deadhead became about that, of exploring how you can become a better person and use what is fear, the opposite, into strength. And so if you see my artwork, I use symbolism of different things that might symbolize fear, and I transform it into something that is more fun, playful. So that's what I started understanding about my work. And instead of me becoming this bitter person, I became more of a, fun and accepting that I'm a goofy person and I'm out there. And so with my artwork, I wanna inspire people to do the same, to not be this robotic person, to be themselves. I mean, if you're a robot, you're gonna be a robot, right? But to be yourself, to be fun, to start liking things around you and getting inspired. So my work's about inspiring people and learning little secrets and things like that and transforming those things into fun things. Basically, that's what my artwork is. Eventually, I created this style, the Deadhead. I didn't know what I was gonna do with it. And I got this idea that like maybe I should start doing fine arts and put it in a gallery. I didn't have any, I was going to museums and stuff, but I wasn't thinking maybe I can put this in a gallery, maybe I can make an art show. And so I decided to just do an art show. But I didn't know how to do an art show, so I would go to a gallery and be like, hey, you like my art? And then, yes, let me call you, and they would never call, or they would tell me no later on. And that kind of like also hurt me in a way, and I was like, it's just taking forever. I need to take this art out because it's pushing me to do it. I have this connection with my artwork that I do not control my artwork. I allow the artwork to control and tell me what to do. I got this, that's another connection that I have with my artwork. Things come to me and they inspire me to do my work. I do not think, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm not gonna do that. No, I allow it to come. Little things come to me, right? And so I'm like thinking of things and asking myself, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna do an art show? And so I went to go and visit my brother. He was, at that time, he was living in Houston. And he drives to go out, like, we're leaving his apartment, and all of a sudden from the dumpster, I see a big box. And for some reason, I just had to get down, and there's a bunch of frames, art, and they're all empty. So I pick up this box, and I just start doing artwork on them. And I just asked my brother to start driving me and drop these pieces of art and make my own art show in just whatever we can find, from fences to just the floor to anything. I'm making my own art show. Nobody's gonna give it to me. I'm gonna show my work. Of course, my mom calls after and she's like, why are you getting art for free? And I'm like, it's not for free because I don't have any clients. I don't even know how to sell art. But what's the point? Why don't you just collect it? And the idea was that if I leave artwork, maybe somebody would have picked it up. And maybe 4 years, I would do an art show. That was the idea. To make a little bit of noise, and then eventually that noise comes back to you. And it's weird, because there is a philosophy, or it's called the butterfly effect, that you see there's butterflies. And it said that a butterfly spreads little wings, and that little air goes around the world, and when it comes back, it becomes a storm. And that was the idea. So I just let that artwork, I didn't put phone numbers, I didn't put names, I just let the artwork, and let the artwork see if it would that happen. And I would just put the moth, like the deadhead moth. I had made a stamp, and I just stamped it. I went back to Laredo, and I think like a week after, my brother calls me. It's working. I'm like, what? I already told him, forgot. He's like, it's working. What's working? Well, let me tell you a story. He's like, okay. So at that time he was working in Galleria, and I think he was Banana Republic or something, and he was working in the dock. And while he was working, he was with another co-worker. And so he asked my brother, and my brother's name is Gus. So he's like, hey Gus, so what do you do? My brother's like, I work here. He's like, no, I do music. Do you have any hobbies and stuff? He's like, why draw? Cool, what kind of art? He's like, well, right now I'm into street art and graffiti. So, oh, do you do graffiti and stuff? He's like, well, I do some letters and stuff. Oh, cool. Yeah. He's like, hey, you know what? There's this guy that like everybody's talking about it and stuff. Yeah, and he's like, yeah, no, have you ever heard of him? And it's like, his name is the Deadhead. And he's like, what? He's like, the Deadhead. How do you know that guy? It's like, no, one of my friends picked artwork, and a lot of people are finding his artwork. And so like now the scene is talking about it. You should see it, it's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, this is my brother. It's my twin brother. Shut up. He's like, yeah, where's he at? Hey, tell us so we can go out and we can, like, maybe we can go to an art show and stuff like that. So he called me, hey, you need to come back. All right. So I come back. And then he takes me to a bar, and we're just hanging, just randomly hanging. And so one guy, he's like, hey, so what do you guys do? Like, what do you guys do? Oh, do art. Oh, what kind of art do you do? And then I was like, well, this. Oh, you're the Deadhead. And I was like, all right. So he was a photographer, and he was working with Switch House. It's a big recording studio in Houston, a rap studio. And so he was a photographer, and I would start hanging out with him. And he invited me out, and Then later on, people from the street art, Bame, he would do stickers and posters. He would call me to start doing collaborations or inviting me out. And eventually, what is the scene in the street art scene in Houston started picking me up and inviting me to, pop-ups and things like that. And eventually I got in 2000, that was 2006, 2008, I did my own solo show in airsoft warfare. And again, it was like one of those things that just trust the artwork, just trust the process, and allows those things to come to you. And for that reason, since people started calling me the deadhead, I call myself the deadhead. I think I honor the people that saw my talent. And so when he was like, oh, what's your name? Death. And what? I was like, Death. But it was really, here in Austin it's a little bit more complicated, but in Houston it was so easy because everybody has nicknames and stuff, everybody does street art, so it was like that. And they're the ones that call me that. So it's pretty cool. And I think like my career of art is in Houston, and in the night scene. And that's why like also, if you see my artwork, there's a lot of night scene and like models and like punk, because I'm a punk goth guy. So I will use whatever I like and stuff and put it in my work. And it was a great experience to me to live in Houston because it's such a mixing pot, and we will hang out with like skaters and other kind of artists, like more folk or hippies, and they were doing different things, right? Like there were some of them that were doing art cars, and some other people are like DJs, and I love that scene where you can have a mixing pot and you can learn from each other and talk about different forms of creating. So I tend to do more like eclectic artwork that is more the opposite of traditional Mexican art. That's why I put like more punk influences. Through my years of doing art, it's already gonna be 20 years. I met musicians like The Strokes, I met Interpol, I met Yes, Caifanes from Mexico, and a lot of musicians also with a lot of famous artists like Ron English, Frank Kuzev, and it has taken me through all these great experiences through art. Unfortunately, for 18 years, I was broke. And so I was just doing art for the sake of art. And I wasn't making a lot, but I still was with that hope that me trying to make artwork, it was gonna pay off. And it took me through a difficult time, but I still persist. And eventually, I came to Austin. And when I came to Austin, everybody was like, it's expensive. It's like, you need a picnic. It's like, okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to get a job. And so, what else? I'm not gonna work at McDonald's. I mean, I love eating at McDonald's, but it's not for me. So I applied as a preparator to Mexicarte, and I became the preparator. Then after that, kept on working, and eventually now I'm hired by the city of Austin as a public artist and also a mentor and a teacher for the MAC. And it paid off, right? Yeah. So I got hired last year by Parks and Rec in City of Austin to make one of the best projects I ever done, and that's the Onion Creek mural project in Onion Creek. The reason why it's great because it's a way to use my artwork to help the community, and not by just creating artwork that you can put in a magazine and things like that. No, this is different. This is artwork that I can cheer people up or make people think the way that I think. by visually. So I got hired by Laura Sparsa, who's my boss, and she is one of the top directors and creatives here in Austin, and I'm really lucky to work for her. And so she gave me this project to work with her. And if you know about Onion Creek used to be a neighborhood that in 2013 experienced a major flood. That unfortunately after that, it made a certain sequences that eventually the city had to buy out because it was a problem. It became a flood zone. And so I got the task of making art for the old neighborhoods. And so I got the project, and one of the problems or eventually obstacles that was going to happen, it was like, how am I going to produce artwork for a neighborhood that I didn't grow up on? How can I create artwork and can honor and respect, show respect to a whole neighborhood that experienced this catastrophe that I have never gone through? And so, and also like thinking like this project for me, for my own success, was this project, am I gonna be able to do artwork for them? So this is one of the things that was going through my head. And so when we had a little meeting and tried to decide what we're gonna do, and so usually public art here in Austin, a lot of times it's ABC questions or invite the community to draw or paint with artists or something. And I was like, that's not gonna cut, right? I think like what I would like to do is collaborate with them. And so the question was, what do you mean collaborating? I mean, they can't draw. I was like, no, I wanna hear their stories. I wanna listen to them and let them speak, and we sit down and just get in me the conversations to start thinking. And so we did a certain series of focus groups where the community was invited to come tell their stories, and we asked 3 questions. What do you think of the neighborhood, and how do you felt living in your neighborhood? What happened the day of the flood? And where are you at? And what do you think should we do as for the future of the park? And these 4 questions helped me started developing the story. Unfortunately, a lot of the stories are really traumatic, really heavy. I think like I have been asked if I was like needed help after that. Fortunately, I exercise, eat well, and I knew what I was getting into, and I knew that it was not going to affect me. I was just, it was going to be a hard moment for me, but I didn't experience those things, so I'm pretty good at that. But one of the things is it did help me start visually thinking of what was happening. But again, like I said, I allow our work to tell me what to do. And through our conversations and through listening, I started noticing little things. And those things was the horse. And why the horse? Because before having the project on hand, I was also working in Parks and Rec in Montopolis Recreation Center. And one of my coworkers at that time, I was hanging out with him doing a task, and he told me that he had experienced the flood. And one of the shocking parts of the flood is going and clean up and finding dead horses hanging from the trees. And so that was like, wow, like what force of water, like the force had to be so strong to just wash a bunch of horses, just put them on top of trees. And so when we did the focus groups, the horse came up again, and we started saying that. And then that started picking up in my mind. And I started remembering like trying to find like mythology, right, and folklore. And there's a monster called the Kelpie that drowns and kills people, and he's out through water. So I was like, one of the things that I was like, I think this monster is the Kelpie, the flood. And then I remember that I had seen images of horses in fountains. And so I went and researched, and in Italy, horses are aquatic. And so if you know about mythology, Pegasus is the son of Poseidon. So that was pretty cool. And then if you know about Onion Creek, it's part of a bigger creek called Camino Real, and it crosses from Mexico crosses all the way to Texas. And that through that creek, there's folklore they had seen a white horse in different parts of the creek. So I knew there was the spirit of the horse. It was there, and I imagined how a bunch of horses are stampeding through houses, and that's how I created the art and the mural project. At that moment, at that time, when I was coming out with this mural, I also had this other project with Oakwood Cemetery. And I was having a lot of problems coming out with an idea. I was bombarded with the obstacle of painting a mural that I couldn't concentrate. But at that moment, closer to getting to get to this project, I was like, I can't think of anything. I can't think. And I remember I just need to let it go, and I need to let it come to me. And one morning that I go to the park, I find a ukulele guitar with a little moon and a book. And it was with that moment that I realized that I had to do something inspired by music for this project. I came over here with Jennifer, and she told me a little bit of the story that is going on and what had happened, and about this cemetery and all the history. And it has been ups and downs, and. And so I think at that moment when I found the ukulele, it clicked. I needed to do something more harmonious for the space, something that brings beauty and inspires and brings a little bit more calmness. And so I started like thinking and putting music of like all Mexican guitars and things like that. And I remember going back again to my grandfather and the musicians. And so I started like getting now inspired and something that can inspire other people, right? With music, harmony, flowers. And again, when Jennifer asked me to do something, she wanted something bold, something more of me, something that shows who I am as a person. And so I created this piece in the back. And if you see, it's a musician playing the guitar, and he is surrounded by nature. You can see my grandfather is a musician, right? And then my grandmother, the flowers. You can see the butterflies, evolution, Mexican, traditional clothing from Mexico, corn, and these traditional things and symbols that are all over Mexico. Also, that you see, I put a big hammer, and that hammer represents. There was a comedian in Mexico that I used to. It's a show called Chapulín, Colorado, and so I used to watch his comedian shows, and see, he used to have this mallet, and so that's what him. And then there's a trumpet for my grandfather, and basically he's just performing for all of you to come the space and inspire everybody. And he also has it's called a dog. So the dog in Mexico, in old folklore, he was the guy who would take the spirits to the spirit world. And I forget the name of the dog. The Cholowinsky. And Chol, yes. So that's basically what I came out with. And again, allowing the artwork to come to me and inspire me to produce pieces that inspire all of you. And hopefully, thank you for coming, and hopefully inspires you if you're an artist and you want to have a little talk with me. Stuff I'd like to say hi to all of you. And thank you again, Oakwood Cemetery.